Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky with special guest Daman Rangula. LeBron James opts in and sends a message at the same time, while Dorian Finney-Smith quietly opts out, I guess. That's all coming up next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcast. This one's always free, never behind paywall. Of course, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where over 35,000 subscribers are all wondering exactly what to do with today's news. Sunday, a busy morning for the NBA generally and the Lakers specifically. We will unpack all of it here in a moment. Do want to let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets while they're when your first $5 bet wins. I mentioned it in the open. Special guest Daman Rangula, favorite of the show. Love the opportunity to get you on. You're a very popular man these days, appearing on important national podcasts. That, so we appreciate you still being willing to hook up with your roots.
I love being on, man. Thank you for the invite, and thank you for Andy slacking off.
Yeah, no, I appreciate when Andy leaves town because it lets me talk to people I like better. So this was Sunday morning was crazy. Like I wake up and I'm like, oh yeah, it's opt-in day. Like we got to figure this stuff out, and all of a sudden, LeBron opts in. That part was kind of expected. And if he'd opted in with nothing else, we'd all be going about our days as if nothing had happened. And then later in the show, we'll talk about this because from a practical standpoint, in terms of what your Los Angeles Lakers roster looks like next season, the news that followed that Dorian Finney-Smith is not going to pick up his $15 million option and will instead enter free agency, that has a much bigger chance to impact what the team looks like, certainly in the near term, than LeBron's thing. But LeBron is LeBron. So let's start with LeBron. What was your news? And we'll get to the Rich Paul quotes. What was your reaction to the news here when you saw it?
So, like you said, I think that as we were projecting what this summer was going to look like, I think this was it just seemed like the most logical option for all parties involved. Just getting the notification that LeBron James was going to opt in was as expected as anything else that could have happened mechanism-wise this summer. And every discussion I've had, every podcast I've listened to, every kind of thought process I've had about this offseason included LeBron opting in. So, like you said, I think comparing it to the DFS news is definitely interesting because the DFS news was the one that really I didn't have a handle on, and it was going to have a big impact on what they do. But what followed LeBron's opt-in is what has changed the complexity of this morning, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. And so if you missed it, nice setup. If you missed it, the quotes from Rich Paul to ESPN. LeBron wants to compete for a championship. He knows the Lakers are building for the future. He understands that, but he values a realistic chance of winning it all. We are very appreciative of the partnership that we've had for 8 years with Jeanie and Rob, and consider the Lakers as a critical part of his career. We understand the difficulty in winning now while prepping for the future. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at his stage in his life and career. He wants to make every season he has left count. The Lakers understand that and are supportive of what's best for him. I mean, so much to unpack. The efficiency of Rich Paul in here.
Yeah.
Of packing news into a very small space is to be commended.
A lot of past tense.
Right? There's very little about the future. The past tense thing is really what struck me.
Yep.
It's everything. Like, appreciative of the partnership we've had. He knows the Lakers are rebuilding for the future, which may be news, by the way, to Luka. This is top. These guys have been at it for a while, but it just goes to show this is top shelf work from LeBron and his management team in terms of these types of statements.
I'll say this. I think in reading the quotes, there have been quotes from the Rich Paul camp, specifically around Anthony Davis wanting a second happened in previous years that I wouldn't say bothered me. That's not the right word, but it's like, oh, this stings. Like whatever is, this is clearly a stinging message being sent across the bow. I didn't read this in that way, and
Mhm.
maybe it has a little bit to do with the Lakers' future is sort of settled in a way with Luka's presence, and my assumption is that Luka is here for the long run, and he obviously indicated positively about the ownership change, etc. And so I read Rich Paul's quotes, and my kind of thought process was, I agree with everything that's being listed here. Like, I don't think Rich Paul said anything that I disagree with. You a lot of this and a lot of the reaction to this news, I think, depends on how realistic you are about the Lakers' current situation, where they rank in terms of being a contender, being in the West, where they actually slot in, and B, how realistic the options are for them to improve this summer. And we have to keep in mind when we talk and when like Rich Paul talks about the Lakers building for the future, at LeBron's age and his stage in his career, where even if he doesn't declare it and plan on it, this could be his last season for what
Could be.
right. It just he has been at that stage now for at least a year, probably 2 years, where he could enter that season, maybe not planning on it, but it could end up being his last season as a basketball player. So his conception and his vision of what a long-term building looks like could literally mean that, hey, they're going to be ready to contend next offseason. And that even is too long for me to wait. And I would tell LeBron, you're right. That could be too long for you to wait. And so it's like a combination of all of those things. How realistic are you about the Lakers right now? How realistic are you about their chances to improve? And C, how realistic are you if you're LeBron James thinking about how long can you actually wait to really be in the hunt? And
Yeah, what's funny? Yeah, what's funny though about that statement is like you can read into that. This could be my last year. You
yep,
can read into it. I could be here for 2 or 3 more years.
yep,
Like there's so much ambiguity there, and what it I think absolutely does. And again, I don't think it's filled with animus, but what it certainly does is opens the possibility of more than ever. I think not finishing my career in Los Angeles. Like that to me has always been the until I see signs that he's going to go somewhere else, I'm just going to default to he's not going anywhere else. This is more along the lines of I don't necessarily need to finish here. Now, I think the amount of places he can go is relatively limited. I think the amount of places he would go is relatively limited. About 85% of it is maybe 90 would be Cleveland. And then I would say that
interesting.
about 7% is the Knicks, and then 3% the field. And I always say that because I think LeBron is very aware of what it looks like. He sees the KD discourse. He said like all these things of like being seen as somebody who's just hunting cities to win championships at this point. Cleveland checks the boxes of a place that is a natural. It makes 1,000% sense that he would want to finish in Cleveland.
Yep.
And they're actually pretty good. Whereas, like, if he starts just hopping around to like Orlando because they suddenly remade that offer,
right.
you're a mercenary at that point. I don't think he wants that.
So I do grant your point about jumping around, and I think it's like it's not a leap to the first question being after you see these Rich Paul quotes. It's like, okay, well, then let's start actually thinking about a trade request. Okay, where to where? And so I agree that my mind went right there too. I'll disagree with your percentages though.
Okay.
So the Cleveland thing definitely is the number one option here for a lot of reasons. I think first and foremost, going to the East, if LeBron does want to leave, it would make only sense to do it to go to the East, because staying in the West, like other than a trade demand to OKC, it's a total crapshoot in the West at this point.
Right. It's like leaving. Like my wife and I talk about it all the time. Like we'd love to own a house in LA. Like what city would you want? Let's move to San Francisco. That doesn't really solve
right. Exactly.
Doesn't solve the problem. Seattle doesn't solve the problem.
Exactly. So I would say that is first and foremost. So the Cleveland, they are well into the second apron, I believe, and it makes trades a little bit difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, grant your point about KD, and I've been on top. Like I think the way KD's career has panned out has been really disappointing. A player of his caliber should not be in any way even approaching being a journeyman, and that's where KD has landed. I will say though, the Knicks are really, really interesting, and they do have the salaries and mechanisms to make a pretty clean trade where it's like the Knicks won't be gutted, but the Lakers can also get some pieces that can help them and fit better with Luka. And I will say, like, the difference between KD and LeBron in a lot of these situations is if something like this were to happen, I can speak for myself as a Laker fan, but I think even the organization, this would be a handshake. Hey man, we had a great time. Thank you for everything. It would be a genuine, like, I'm telling you, my reaction to Rich Paul's quotes today were just to nod my head and say, yeah, this all tracks. Like, this makes sense to me.
Let's stick on this for a second after the break, because I think you are 100% right about how this could potentially play out. So we'll do all of that, and plus we'll break down this DFS thing coming up next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. Whether all about baseball under the lights, golf in the greens, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Or, in theory, if you're on the app, you can do both at the same time. So, whether it's placing same-game parlays or watching the bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can get bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. If your first bet wins, or you can open the FanDuel app today and visit FanDuel.com to get started. Either way. So just to catch people up, and we'll go back to LeBron here, but if you don't, the DFS thing basically means that if Dorian Finney-Smith, he has opted out of his $15 million player option, if he signs somewhere else, the Lakers will be able to open up access to the larger exception. I think it's $15 million they'd have to play around with that can be divided up among multiple players. It opens up a host of options, sort of, and that's something we can break down a little bit as the show goes along, because you have to be able to sign people, and it's questionable whether or not how much value there really is out there on the free agent market right now. So we'll get to that in a minute. And obviously the Lakers would also have to replace what Dorian Finney-Smith was doing. So some of that money would go to replacing the guy who just left. But anyway, back to the LeBron thing. One thing I definitely agree with you. I don't think this is going to become like some sort of ugly situation. I think if we got to a point where LeBron was like, you know what, in this year, like the end of the summer, I'm looking at this roster and it's just not doing it for me. I want to get to the East because, we could be a 50-win team here, and there are 4 or 5 teams with a better chance to win than us.
Yep.
So I don't think anything would happen until it was almost basically set. I don't think you would hear about a LeBron trade demand. I think all of this, assuming you can keep everybody keep it under their hats, and certainly the Rich Paul crew are good at keeping a secret when they need to. I think the deal. By the way,
so are the Lakers. The Lakers have been very good at. It's the one thing as an organization. Like, whenever trades happen with the Lakers, people can kind of piece together like logical options for the Lakers, but trades usually come out of nowhere when they do them. And so.
It's the benefit of having 3 people in your basketball.
Right. No, and especially for a transaction like this happens at like between owners and between this is happening at a very high level. There's no, assistant GM involved and some head scout involved. No. This is top level. No. Yeah.
So you agree, like if it were the Knicks, for example, Anunoby and a couple other things, Mitchell Robinson, just, they need centers and all that kind of stuff. Like, the parameters of that would be set before anybody, and it would just happen. And like,
absolutely, it would just be, it wouldn't even be, I don't even think you'd even get a leak saying LeBron has chosen XYZ as his preferred destinations. The next notification for something like this will be it'll just be, I think, that this is the trade. I think that's how it goes out.
If this were to happen, if it could be timed for that early September window when traffic on these types of shows tends to wane a little. Use that bump just to, kind of keep
Think of the podcasters, LeBron.
Right, please. I mean, he's one of us, Dom.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, that's true. That is true.
We welcomed him into the club. We were here first. From a practical standpoint, though, I think this is probably the best option for the Lakers. I mean, setting aside the language that Rich Paul and crew used, which are, getting the internet to go crazy on Sunday, from like an actual outcomes standpoint, this is the best thing short of the LeBron opting out and opting in for $25 million, which was never going to happen.
Right.
Because now they have clarity. The problem with these one-on-ones every year, and if he opted out and said, I want another 1-on-1, they would have given it to him because he's still LeBron. He's still an all NBA. He was in all NBA second team last year. He finished sixth in the MVP voting. We are still talking about an extremely good player who would be impossible to replace on the free agent market this offseason. So they don't want him to walk. But now what they have is a definitive endpoint if they want to walk away from the LeBron thing after this year. And so what you really need more than anything with a 41-year-old star coming up on 41 is clarity. And now that at least they have it, it creates hard potential decisions and potentially awkward ones, so they'll have to navigate it. But now they can look at their ledger and be like, we can take LeBron James off the books after this year. What does that mean? How do we prepare? How do we do that stuff? What could we do with that contract? What if he wants to be traded? They can play through all of these scenarios much more actively than they could. Well, he's also got a player option for the next year, and we don't know if he's going to pick it up.
Right. And alignment of a title window as well. I mean, this is LeBron James has rightly been the center of the universe and the nucleus of whatever organization he's a part of. And even with Luka's presence last year and even next year, if LeBron is on the team, it is still a LeBron team. That'll always be the case. That is the kind of player he is. That is kind of the force that he is. Like, he is still the leader, and everything will be kind of, yes, they will take into account what Luka wants and how things fit around him, and long-term that is the plan. But with LeBron on the team, there's like two contrasting sort of championship timelines going on, where the sense of urgency, if LeBron does end up in a different market, all of a sudden then you have complete clarity around, okay, it's actually Luka and Austin for the next X amount of years that we have to think about and how we're going to build around, how we're going to do this. Okay, we have these trade offers for this XYZ, and right now, if Rob Pelinka got a trade offer right now that maximized their opportunities to win this next year, but hurt them 3 years down the line, that's a difficult decision, because with LeBron not in the picture, if that happens, you have clarity. Now, this might make them worse. Like, there's a lot of bad outcomes of this. I'm not like, the one thing I'm not going to do here is celebrate that LeBron trade, right? That's not going to happen. This is if it were to happen, it's a very logical. Again, I come back to, how realistic are you about this Lakers team? That really is I think that ultimately is
or even like snapping your fingers and like, okay, well, they're done with the LeBron business. Right. How do you equate the Luka part of this? Because the Lakers Luka Donic has not signed an extension. Like, there's every expectation that he will. But like the question you raised there about 3 years from now versus this year, like, I agree with you. Luka has a longer time horizon. You can look at it and say, if they can't fix it this offseason, and I think there's a good chance they can't fix it they're going to be good. They're not a trash team, but you got to be a lot better than good to win in the Western Conference this year. And so if they can't fix it this offseason, but they can set themselves up so that the following two off seasons are really going to be potentially very strong, I can give up this one. But I'm like the 3 year time window of like, if it gives us 3 years and then in year four we could have problems. Like, I don't know if he would. Like, I don't think Luka wants to
no, that's you're right. So you're right.
Where do you put that? Because Luka was excited, like got out there and was excited about the Mark Walter thing, because he understands this is going to be my owner for the next decade, and I like that setup. So
Yeah.
I think they have some wiggle room, but how do you sort of manage those two timelines in terms of thinking about Luka with a little bit longer, but also the pressure to kind of put something together that works now?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good call out. Also, I did say 3 years. I should have said 2 years. You're right. It's like if LeBron James does leave the team this offseason, all the pressure actually is on next offseason and not even beyond that. I think that is a completely fair assessment. Also, though, I think it's a completely realistic situation because, man, they have clean books like at starting next offseason, and they will have 3 first-round picks that they can trade. They're in prime position to be kind of a leader of that offseason to get whatever's out there and whatever stars out there. I mean, look, I know the Lakers front office is doing this because that's what they do. Look, man, Giannis is going to stay this offseason, it looks like, but one more year and you're in a position to make that kind of trade now. Like, you can really position yourself for that kind of a player in just one offseason. It's going to take an
crazy
offseason.
thought to think about Luka and Giannis playing together.
Right. But that's what the front office is doing, right? That this is has to be like the number one scenario that they have outlined right now. It's like, okay, let's wait for that to happen. And look, man, this Denver situation, you start going down the road and you're like, okay, there's a lot of situations around, especially the West, where people are going to start getting impatient if the West continues to be like this. And so it's all about positioning. And I do think that is a good call out that, look, Luka also, I mean, he also will want to compete for championships. And so this whole offseason and trade deadline could be building towards what you can do next offseason. And look, the big stuff is what Rob Pelinka does. And that big stuff, like, he could position himself well for next offseason. And then you're kind of, it makes sense. And I also understand why LeBron would be impatient waiting for that.
After the break, I want to break down what you're just saying a little bit more. We'll do a little bit on DFS, but you just kind of tugged at a string with the Lakers and their front office that I think is worth pulling on a little bit more because it gets to some of their potential advantages, but also some of their worst habits. So we'll do that next. All right, so I think one advantage the Lakers have in this offseason is this is actually one of the places where the box that they put themselves in and the limit of it's a lousy free agent market. There aren't a lot of like Nickeil Alexander-Walker is expected to actually sign and get more money than even this exception that DFS would open up. Like if I could swap out the two of them and that was my only thing, and now I got to figure out centers and all that, I will take Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Right.
26 years old. He kind of replicates a lot of what DFS does. He can guard a little bit deeper into the backcourt, 1s and 2s. And so that's an upgrade. Better fixing your timeline. People forget Dorian Finney-Smith is much older than people think. He's been for a while. Yeah. God bless him. But he's in the next contract you sign with him takes him, into his mid 30s, 34, 35 years old. So the fact that there isn't much that the Lakers can do, which is extremely frustrating to Lakers fans, is actually the one time where I do think it sort of legitimately opens the door to what you're talking about of like, what happens if we wait a year and see which guy is in a bad situation? Because this has been a terrible habit of the Lakers story. Of like, we got clean books. We're just going to go out there and put some videos together and get us LaMarcus Aldridge, and we're going to get Carmelo Anthony, and we're just going to do stuff because we're the Lakers and we've got cap space. And to some degree, I think cap space will never be less important than it's like, you got to have the pieces, you got to have flexibility, you've got to have good players under contract. But the flip side is maybe can they wait? I think how do you think this works? Because I hate that habit that they have of just waiting for the next star to fall into their lap. But maybe there is a window here just to see how things happen over the next year.
I'll say that if it comes down to waiting, I think that Luka and Austin together, I think that the front office believes that duo is good enough at the top level. And so if that big star doesn't materialize, if that Giannis Jokic dream doesn't materialize, I think that they can actually position themselves to still between trades. And again, I think like these kinds of things, like they start developing well before. So if they get wind that, hey, that free agency is probably not going to materialize, I think they could be really active at the trade deadline, accumulating good pieces on contracts from teams that perhaps are struggling more than they thought, and they need to offload salary because of, the CBA stuff, and position themselves to be okay. Let's not worry about free agency, but let's just accumulate assets right now on contracts, and they'll be in position to do that way better at the trade deadline and next offseason. And so I think that with the salary structure and the way teams are struggling, like by next offseason, who knows what financial situation teams are in. Like, again, I point to the West. Like, the West is such a disaster right now, where you could be a close to second apron team in the play-in, and you're like, what are we doing here? We got to reset here. And the Lakers can be in a situation ready and waiting for those teams. If they can't get the big fish, there's plenty of little productive fish with nice contracts that they can accumulate. And I mean, realistically, the big trades now, the big acquisitions that happen are not in free agency, they're in trades. And so they'll be well positioned to accumulate those assets, and be ready.
That's my thing. It's like, what I always get annoyed at is the emphasis on space and clean sheets, all this stuff. It makes it so, like, it's like, do you have any confidence in your ability to recognize and sign a player to a contract that will have some value around the league, that will not be seen as a millstone, and make some deals? And now,
like, boy, that Vando contract. Yeah, that Vando contract. I'm just looking at it. I'm like, oh boy.
And I thought it was. I didn't think it was going to be this limiting when they signed him. I thought it'd be like potentially, like, decent number for a guy who helps him. And it's like, oh man. But I don't think they have tons of confidence in their ability to do that sort of thing without having to attach stuff to get rid of players that they need to move. So maybe that's part of it.
This is one area where I think JJ Redick might be very helpful, because I would say Rui, the benefit, the Rui was such a win because A, they got him at a good trade value, but B, over time, he and the team have improved his situation. Like, he has grown into not only being worthy of his contract, but actually better than his contract.
Yeah.
And that is, if JJ continues to develop as a coach and continues to have off seasons with these guys and just builds and builds and builds, that is one area where, I mean, let's be honest. Like, I think Darvin Ham got too much crap for a lot of the things that happened with the Lakers, but that is one area where we didn't see a lot of specific individual player growth that I think hopefully we can see with JJ. And that'll really, like, this offseason, to see how players look next year. I'm very interested to see how some players come back and spend the offseason. Yeah.
And I think, if there's a lesson of the finals, it's, first, I mean, it is important not to. The Pacers are a lot more like the Pistons that beat the Lakers, in the sense that, like, you look at, there's a lot more talent on that team than you sort of get credit for. Yeah. But it's like, your second best player is Siakam and things like that. And, like, you can build a team, particularly around Luka, that has 1 A+++ in Luka and like 6 B+, and be a pretty effective team, even if you don't have that absolute second star like Dallas had, with Kyrie and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of ways to do this. I want to make sure we touch on DFS before we go, because this is a tricky one, right? Like,
very.
Which would you rather do? Like, do you want to bring back DFS and then you still have access to your taxpayer mid-level, about $6 million, or are they better off kind of letting him go, having that larger number to play with, but a bigger roster hole that they need to fill?
This is where how Luka responds to this LeBron news is going to be pretty interesting, because DFS is a very good friend of Luka. Luka was not happy when Dallas let DFS walk or traded him. I forgot what the transaction was, but anyways, Dallas let DFS go, and Luka was not happy about that. And I think Luka and DFS, it was good for Luka to have DFS around here. If Luka starts feeling a little queasy about, hey, why is LeBron, like, what's going on here? DFS may have value just sticking around just for that. And I I take your point about him being older. I think that JJ overused him in the playoffs. Like, I mean, there was a lot of overuse of a lot of players.
Probably overused.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think DFS in a more managed role can still be very valuable. His contract may be a net negative, or you may have to sign him at that. But if that's something that keeps Luka at bay and makes him sign a max extension and makes it easier for that to happen, might be one of those things where you just got to bite the bullet as a part of a LeBron transaction that happens. And you can consider those things in conjunction. If Luka is quietly excited about having his own team and, hey, I love LeBron, but it was time. And you can kind of explain to him that, hey, DFS was very good for us, but this is the situation with the money and we're actually building for next offseason. This is one of those areas where I know the Lakers can over-index on appeasing your star. I think this one I would run through Luka, all these scenarios, and wherever we land, I'd be happy to go that route.
Because I think the problem with DFS is it's a little like Rui. Like Rui is, if you traded Rui, for example, you need to replace the skill set. You need to replace. He was a 40+% 3-point shooter, and he was, especially like depending on how you rearrange a rotation, could be an extremely valuable guy to help carry a second unit's offense. And also, like, he did a lot of good things. He's also got really obvious shortcomings, and the problem with the Lakers roster is the shortcomings and the stuff they don't match up right. And so
how many of our like best players are power forwards right now? That's basically like a big issue.
Yes. And and DFS is supposed to be your 3-and-D guy and all that kind of stuff. And he shot the ball fine. He wasn't totally healthy, but DFS played fine. Didn't have a great playoffs, but like over the rest of you saw what you were supposed to see. But he's not an athletic 3-and-D wing guy or whatever, who can go up and guard the opponent's best point guard and drop down and pick up, do all that stuff that a lot of these guys do. He's not super athletic in that way.
Yeah.
And that on a team with no athletes, where the kid they drafted in the second round, who God willing won't play very much, he's instantly the best athlete on the team. The second best athlete on the team is probably maybe Rui, or
Rui,
Bronny. Bronny
Yeah.
might be the second best athlete on the team. The third or fourth best athlete on the team is Bron.
Yeah.
And he's 72 years old. We're just Luka is an extraordinary athlete, but not in the one thing that he isn't is the high flying, super fast, whatever thing.
Although I don't know, he's looking pretty light. Let's see what
he looks fantastic.
The European diet, man.
Oh, they should just move the team.
I know. I was joking. They should. The new owners should fly in all the meals from Europe for Luka.
Why not? Whatever works, man. But he's looking. Spite for Nico Harrison is very powerful. It's fine. I'm here for that. If that's what it takes. It's they need to figure out a way to get some of their. That's why Alexander Walker, who again, if you go look at your Twitter timeline, it's looking less and less likely that money will be able to get him, even if they had the $14 or $15 million to spend. Minnesota would just keep him for that much, but it's they need to upgrade those aspects of it. When you think about the center, they need a center who can rebound, offensive rebounding. They need to put the pieces.
You look at what succeeded in the finals this year and what succeeded in the playoffs, and it was young, athletic, deep. Both Oklahoma City and Indiana went 10 deep in the playoffs, which is unprecedented. By the end, sure, they were down to 7, 8, whatever, 9 people, but I mean, other years teams get down to 6 players by the time it's time, and so this is just the way it is. And I thought what Indiana did specifically of hey, we're going to play small shifts, quick shifts. We're going to go deep into our bench. We're going to turn every corner. We're going to flip every matchup and try to do this. I thought it was really compelling. And from a team building point of view, like you're saying, this is where you look at what the Lakers are looking like and you're it has to be get younger, get faster somehow, some way.
And it's like it was the young two-way players. You have enough two-way guys in Indiana that you can take your one-way guys and support them better. And but you say you can support Austin Reeves. If you have two or three more guys on your roster who are legitimate two-way players, all of a sudden Austin's defensive, he becomes a pretty good defender because he's not unwilling.
He competes. He competes.
You just don't want him guarding the other team's main scorer in the playoffs. You need to avoid that. And you can protect Luka. You can do. It's the problem with the Lakers is they have a ton of one-way guys. Vando's 2 one-way. Rui is a one-way guy. You start piling these people up. I would like to have you let's just let Andy stay on vacation because we didn't cover it. And but at the very least, let's find a time to get you back on before the end of the summer. I don't know. If
I had a blast. Plans. I would love to.
Because I don't know if you're writing the song of the summer. I'm not sure what you're up to, but we want to have you back when this all gets sorted out, figure out what happened.
I'd love to. I had a blast, man.
All right. Daman Rangula, go check him out across socials. If you're watching us, you probably follow him anyway. But thanks again for the time. Really appreciate it. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 35,000 subscribers to the channel. We will see everyone tomorrow.